Metaverse gaming and NFTs could account for 10% of the luxury market within the next 8 years. Now, this is according to a research note by Morgan Stanley. The bank expects that the NFT market will grow to around $300 billion by 2030. Now, Will, I know how much you love when banks release these research reports. So I'm going to kick this off to you, and then we can dive a little bit deeper into what they've said about the metaverse and NFTs. But what did you take away from this article?
Not a ton, to be honest. Not a ton of information I gleaned from this. I guess it's interesting to see that there's more attention to the NFT marketplace in general. From my understanding of like the fashion industry, which I don't have a ton of knowledge about besides just some friends who work in the LA clothing industry, there's not a lot of money on the digital side at all. And that makes sense, right? It's all physical. And the only digital side you have is probably like the marketing element of it, or like drop shipping, maybe set up like a quick boutique shop online. And that's about it. And if you were able to add some sort of digital component to it, where you're wearing clothing both in physical life and online, that would necessarily open things up a little bit more. I saw one thing, well, I guess Nike did this a little bit ago, where they released a shoe that you could purchase and then also have your avatar wear in the metaverse, which is pretty interesting that you kind of combine those two worlds together. And I think it makes sense going forward if this metaverse thesis kind of plays out. Like, I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't know if it's going to take off, and I kind of don't want it to take off, but
you said that about NFTs, and NFTs really took off. So I don't think we can trust your...
Yeah, I said I don't want it to take off. I didn't say it wasn't going to. Actually, I think I did say it wasn't going to a few times. That's all I have for you on this topic.
Well, I want to dig into that. Why don't you want the metaverse to take off? What have you got against it?
I just like in real life interactions more. I think they're more meaningful. It's simply it.
Sure. And now we literally have screens we sit in front of and type to people. You don't think that enhancing that experience that we already spend like most of our lives doing will be a better way to interact digitally? Because digital interaction isn't going away, but it can be made better.
It can be. Yeah, I agree. But slippery slope. I'd rather just keep it simple. I'll send you an email and then I'll talk to people in physical life. Here I'm at.
Are you saying that this show is not meaningful to you?
Yeah, he doesn't want to hang out with us in the metaverse, Jen, but you and I, we're going to hang out, we're going to have so much fun, and we're going to buy so many luxury products in there.
We are.
That's really the future. I mean, it's interesting reading this article and hearing these predictions. People are just really diving into this metaverse concept now. And it's interesting because, I mean, we've had like Google Glass was an epic failure back in the day, and just like all this technology that is leading towards something like a metaverse that just came too early, and people were like, nah, this is weird, don't want to do this. And then suddenly, as our lives become more and more digitized, as our remote work situation just moves further in the decentralized direction, we're starting to envision a world where this may become a reality. And I think that has just led to a tremendous amount of resources being invested into this, and predictions from Morgan Stanley saying by 2030, 10% of luxury market goods, NFTs could account for them. So it's just a very interesting situation that everyone is piling into this. I watched this TikTok video yesterday where this guy's like, hey, this is how you buy a plot of land in the metaverse. And I'm like, it's starting. Because like, again, I'm going to go back to Neil Stephenson. You read Snowcrest, you learn about how Hero, first got this amazing plot of land in their metaverse, was just an early coder who was working on this tech and just got in early. And, years later, it becomes this most coveted spot of everyone in the metaverse. They're all trying to get into his like nightclub there. And so it's like interesting to see, like, is this just vaporware? Is this something where you'll buy this plot of land in this kind of like weird block built metaverse that's kind of janky and strange, and it just ends up being nothing? Or you could be an early investor in what could be everything. We just don't know. And I'm very curious to see how much people, latch onto this. But Jen, I'll throw it back to you.
I almost bought a plot of land in the metaverse yesterday. I was really just bored. Didn't happen, but it was a real thought. On the topic of luxury brands, I mean, I think a lot of luxury brands have been trying to play in the NFT space. Burberry launched some digital clothing that we spoke about earlier this year. And Louis Vuitton launched like a Metaverse-esque game where you could kind of like go through this forest and look for Louis Vuitton assets. It was very strange. I tried to play it. It was boring. And so I think they are trying. I think we still have a little bit of a ways to go. But what was interesting, Morgan Stanley also released that investors are looking at how to get exposure to the metaverse. And they're saying that Facebook is the best way to get exposure to the metaverse. And I thought that was really interesting because while Facebook is building a metaverse, there are also other ways to get exposure to a metaverse in maybe a more decentralized way. Naomi, I'm going to kick this back down to you. Like, what do you think of this? Should people who want to get exposure to the metaverse be looking at Facebook stock?
I mean, gosh, like if you'd asked me whether to buy in Facebook stock like a year ago, I would have said no. If you look at the way the numbers are going when they release their reports and you just see that the audience is getting older and older, younger people aren't embracing it. And it doesn't look like it's a very strong trajectory, but now they've done this major pivot, which is really interesting, going towards something which I do think is the future. And they've always been like pretty amazing with staying on the cutting edge of tech. You know, most of Silicon Valley is built on Facebook tech that they've open sourced and maintained. And so they, you know, do a lot to contribute to that world. So I don't know. I mean, I won't be buying any. I'm definitely looking at some of the tokens that are fueling the decentralized metaverse economies. I think as when you have a controlled environment that is centralized, that, I mean, I really don't like the censorship implications of that, but I do recognize how that does take away a lot of the friction for new people. So they're probably going to get like a mass market share in the decentralized options. It's going to take a lot for them to be competitive with a product that we know is going to be polished coming out of Facebook. So it's like, it's a real interesting question. I always like to make my investments line up with my value system as well. So I think that's also something people should keep in mind, whether this is the future that they want to be supporting or whether, you know, there's a different future out there that could be better. So interesting big questions to think about.